You are listening to the One Day at a Time Recovery Podcast. On this podcast, my guests share their stories of alcoholism, addiction, and how they recovered so that you can too. My hope is that you find the inspiration and resources you need to let go of what's holding you back so that you can transform into the person you were always meant to be. Ready? Here we go. Hey friend, welcome to the podcast. My name is Arlena and I'll be your host. Today, I'll be joined by Todd Crandell. He is an author, speaker, triathlete, vegan, and recovery advocate. This guy is super high energy. He does a ton of service work, and he has an incredible impact on the lives of his clients and their families through Race for Recovery. I had so much fun talking to Todd. He has a great message, and I can't wait for you to meet him. So without further delay, please enjoy this episode with Todd. Well, Todd, thank you so much for joining me today.
This is going to be awesome.
And thank you so much for your patience. Man, we were having some technical difficulties, but here we are.
We got it sorted. And my background is real.
Dude, so you're in the Dominican Republic to do your 114th Ironman. Is that true?
That's correct. And it is
Ooh.
absolutely breathtaking down here. I've never been here and I love it. And it's great to talk to you, and let's do it.
Let's do it. So I like to start with a little game that I call the lightning round, which is actually kind of slow, but we're going to front load the episode with some resources because I know you're all about solutions. So we're going to talk about some solutions. And I am a huge bookworm. So I always ask people, like when you were new to recovery, were there any books that really inspired you or helped you on your journey?
Great question. I was not a reader when I should have been a reader when I was going to school, but I became a reader early in sobriety, and I've read all the good rock star books, some politician books. I read a lot of true stories, whether it's political, athletic, or music, because it's basically the same story. It's, I had a dream, I worked my butt off, here's what I went through, and life is good. And I can relate to that because I've written 6 books myself. But those are the types of stories I like, true stories of people who went out there and got it done.
Yeah, the biographies, man. They are just so inspiring because I think especially when people share the darkness, I know you don't like to like get into the war stories, but there is something about understanding how dark it gets for people that we kind of relate to, that we start to think, oh, maybe I could do it too.
You know, this is one time we're talking about the war story, if you will. The stories of the quantities, it's like, yep, I think we all qualify for that, and we can talk about that. That's fine. The war story for me, it really is the suicidal ideation, the despair, the low self-esteem, the self-hatred I know that I had. Those are the real war stories. And that's what I want to convey to your audience today of like, look, I can relate to those hard feelings. I understand them. Here's how you overcome to fight another day. And that to me is an effective war story that can be a positive story.
Absolutely, definitely. So it sounds like when you said rock star books, do you mean like literal rock stars, like people who wrote their biographies?
Well, you and I have a mutual respect for Motley Crue, so I like you even more.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm an
I'm talking,
80s baby.
Slash's book, Nikki Sixx's books, The Dirt by Motley Crue, all the 80s hair metal. That's me. Uh,
So
right?
funny.
Yeah,
Did you ever go to the Day on the Green concerts?
I didn't. Did you?
Oh, yes. I mean, I was high for most of it, so I don't remember who played, but it was like, it was like I was like into Rat and Motley Crue and Loverboy, just like all those,
Yeah.
all the same band. Oh
At
my goodness.
the old Oakland stadium, correct?
Yeah. It was like the Cow Palace or the Bill, I think they called it the Bill Graham Center, but like the Oakland Coliseum. Yeah, super fun.
Well, I have to ask you this. Were you at the US Festival?
I may have been. I'm not sure. The US Festival.
That
Where
was
was
the
that?
big, that was the big, it turned, heavy metal or hair metal, that put it on the scene, but it was in Los Angeles or San
Oh,
Bernardino, actually, back in
no.
1983.
83. No, so I was like a freshman in high school in Cupertino, California at that time.
Well, we both should have been there. I will
We
say
should have
that.
been there. Birds of a feather, right? That's so fun.
Right.
Yeah, I love those stories. My husband is like a music savant. I can literally play him two notes and he knows. It's like not exactly information you can monetize, but we're the same era, so it's super fun to
Great.
talk about talk about
Yeah,
those
it's
times.
great.
Back to the lightning round. I told you it was slow. Um, listen, you've been sober almost a year to the day longer than I have been. And I wonder if over that time you have like a quote that you live by, a mantra. I mean, like I really love the one day at a time, obviously. But
Mhm.
is there like a reoccurring thread that has been present your entire sobriety?
Yes, the Racing for Recovery slogan is with sobriety, anything is possible. And
Ooh.
I like, as you do you, I believe in the one day at a time. I applied that when I was getting started. And the one quote that I like too that starts off my podcast is, if you want the reward, do the damn work.
Dude, you strike me as so like no bullshit. Like just get busy. Mood follows action. Like you
Yeah,
gotta just cut the crap, do the work, get the results. It's very simple.
it's pretty simple.
Yeah.
And literally that's what, look at, let me say this. Everybody can do this.
Yes.
Everybody can get sober. Everybody can achieve whatever they want to achieve in sobriety, and some don't. And I'm sorry for that. And you just didn't do it. And I'm not trying to be condescending. I'm not trying to be rude. I'm actually being loving and caring. You either do this or you don't. And if you can do addiction the way we did addiction, you can do sobriety. It's a choice.
Amen to that. I love that. Do you have a regular self-care practice? I mean, as a guy that does 114 Ironmans, for heaven's sakes, what does your, I'm not trying to be an ultra athlete, but what does your self-care practice look like?
My self-care is the same as it was kind of on day one of my sobriety. I'm not drinking. I'm doing my best to heal from what led me to choose drugs and alcohol to cope from trauma. I
Mhm,
exercise.
mhm.
I'm vegan, so I eat plants. I do my best to serve other people. I learn things. I read. I live. And that's a balanced, holistic lifestyle that I do every day,
I
every
love
single day.
it. I'm gonna have to ask you some questions about being vegan because I've often toyed with the idea and just haven't been able to get there. But but one more question, and then we'll kind of just get started. I kind of want to know about your backstory. But what is one thing? Can you think of one thing that you wish you would have known when you first got sober?
That is a great question. And I don't think anybody's ever asked me that one. So
Oh,
good on you.
yay.
That's good.
Not even Rich Roll.
No, actually, I met him back before he became Rich Roll when we were doing Ultraman Hawaii together.
Wow.
We can get into that at one point, but yes, I was not. I knew I was going to do something in recovery. I didn't know how awesome it was going to be. And I've also found there has been some monumental hardships that I didn't think were going to be that hard. And I bring up the rough with the good because once again, I never made a choice to use again to deal with those hardships. And it's put me in a position to enjoy the good stuff even more.
Mm, yeah. Yeah. Enduring the hardships. Listen, yeah, we've been sober, 3 decades. So a lot of stuff can happen in that time. But we're a testament that you can stay sober through it all. Now, I want to just sort of kind of touch on, I'm always so curious about people's childhood because I feel like that sets the stage for everything that's to come. And I just know from doing research that you had a lot of family trauma and stuff. But can you tell me a little bit about what it was like growing up in your house? Like, did you have siblings? What did your parents do?
Well, some of this I don't remember because my earliest recollection of being a kid is I'm 10 years old. So right there on a
Oh,
psychological level, you can tell the impact of trauma if your earliest memories at 10. So
yeah.
here's how this stuff happened. There was four kids in my mom's family. My mom committed suicide when I was 3 from her drug and alcohol addiction. My uncle, who was on his way to medical school at Ohio State University, he got involved in psychedelics. He developed drug-induced schizophrenia. He killed himself. My aunt used food as a coping mechanism and developed type 2 diabetes, and they started chopping limbs off. She committed suicide. And there's one surviving aunt who is extremely intelligent, but she struggled with weight. So when I share that, and I know people are like going, "Oh my God." And yes, I get the wow factor of that. But to me, I'm like, what in the world was going on in that household that 3 out of 4 kids killed themselves? So for me, thankfully, my stepmom, who I don't like to call her that, she married my dad when I was 5. And I had the idyllic childhood on outside levels, good schools, nice clothes, friends, athletic ability. But inside, I was troubled. And that's where eventually a choice to try alcohol at the age of 13 sent everything off. But I came from a great environment, which kind of made it worse for me going, dude, you have everything that a lot of kids would dream of having, and you still hate yourself. And that's the impact of trauma. And as a clinician, that's what I do with people is help them understand their traumas and how to deal with them effectively.
Why, why at 13 did you hate yourself?
I just I never felt good enough. I wasn't smart enough. And even when you said, "Oh, Todd, you look good for your age," it's still, and I hear that, I'm like, well, okay, yes, I do, because there's a part of me that's like, no, you don't. You're never going to be good enough, and it still creeps in there at times. And I just didn't feel good enough at anything. I didn't feel I was good enough for God. I didn't think I was smart enough. I didn't feel I was whatever enough, except for playing hockey. That is the one thing where I was like, this is my ticket to survive. And of course, once I got involved with drugs, I threw that away as well. But I just didn't have any self esteem whatsoever. And I struggled with suicide my entire life.
Wow. Even before you started using, did you have suicidal ideation?
I had thoughts of just not really thinking I was going to be here. I can't
Wow.
pinpoint and say, yes, I want to die, but I just felt like, God, I just feel out of place. I don't fit in as a young kid, fourth, fifth, sixth grade, high school. It just didn't work. And then when I started doing drugs, then I started to, I really did believe I was going to end up the way my mom did. It just was like, well, I know I'm going to get there. When is this going to happen? And when your own
Wow.
father, even my own dad, he would say, he basically was telling me, I don't even didn't think you were going to make it to 16.
He told you this after the fact?
He told me this like during addiction, like, 17, 18, 19, 20. We started having conversations about, God, this is some gut wrenching stuff. We were talking about what he was going to do with my insurance money when I was dead from drugs. And it's really weird when you're having a conversation like that with your own father that seems normal. And I have 4 beautiful kids right now, and I can't imagine what that was like for my dad. But at the time, I think he just accepted that he was going to lose his son the way he lost his wife. And for me, I didn't I didn't give a damn. So to me, it was just normal to talk like that. And I'm hearing my voice right now. I'm seeing the look on your face, and I'm like, that's not good. It's
That's
just
so
not good.
sad.
It's sad.
What do you think your father was seeing that caused him that much concern? What did he see?
I think when I was on ESPN, he made a quote that said something to the effect, I always knew that Todd could get through this if it didn't kill him first. And he has told me over the years, he goes, you are just like your mom, except there was more of a will to live inside of me that he didn't see in my mom.
Mm.
And honestly, that's the thing that kept me alive. And I will say this, and I don't want to offend anybody. Um, I think God and my mom on April 15th, 1993, when I got arrested for my third drunk driving charge, they gave me the gift of a change of mindset. I literally believe that, because it was like a light bulb went off and I got a new awakening, and I said, I'm done. And that was it. And
Yeah,
I give my mom credit for that.
that's beautiful. I mean, I don't hear anything offensive in that. And I know that, we try to be sensitive to people's ideas about God, but I'm curious, what is your concept of a higher power or God or whatever you want to call it?
This conversation is an example of a higher power. Look how we got connected.
Yeah.
That's not an accident. That was, to me, destined to happen. And I do want to say this. My mom's suicide is the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. Now, it took me a long time to figure that out, and I am not condoning suicide, obviously.
Mhm.
But when people can take trauma, and there's a ton of it out there, when you can take trauma and turn it into an asset, it's a good thing. And I've done that with my mom's suicide for sure.
Yeah, I totally get that. I think maybe at first blush, if someone is hearing that it sounds outrageous, but I have often thought that this thing, I don't know what you want to call it, yeah, alcoholism, alcohol use disorder, this thing that I have that almost killed me turned out to be the thing that has been like my superpower. It's the best, worst thing that ever happened to me.
Absolutely. And I hope everybody hears what we're really trying to say here. Again, I'm not condoning drug usage. I'm not
Right.
condoning suicide. I'm saying we hear you. We know what that feels like. Here's a whole other way of living life. And it's pretty good, or you and I would still be doing drugs if it wasn't, right?
Yes, because I am one of those people who insist on having a good time.
All the time.
as
All the time.
as you do, obviously.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, so you started at age 13. I heard there was Jack Daniels or something involved. Is that true?
Yeah, I'll give you this is where, genetically, when we're predisposed to addiction and you make a choice to ignite that addiction, it's on. And I first tried alcohol at the age of 13, took 2 sips, that was it. And I could tell something was different. The second time I ever drank, I drank a fifth of Jack and took some speed with it. And it was like that every single time I drank. I don't know the concept of one or two or three of anything. It was full on days of whatever. And I went until I couldn't physically go. And then you recover and get up and do it again. But genetically, when you're predisposed to addiction and you make a choice to use it, look out, because it's going to get you. Yeah.
100%. Yeah, that's how I ran it too. Just kind of balls out, if you will, until I crash and burn at 25. So you must have been around 25 too when you got sober, weren't you?
26. Yes.
26.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe you're my long lost sister
Or
somewhere.
am I? You're like my soul twin.
Right.
There's so many similarities. Yeah. No, dude, I crashed and burned at 25. And I had like this, I've always had like this sense of ambition, like I wanted more out of my life. Like I'm a total workaholic and I wanted something more. And I just couldn't. I really wanted to get rid of the drugs and alcohol and just really had such a hard time, but finally came to the conclusion I couldn't moderate. And that's when sobriety. I met some people who were like, listen, back when you and I first got sober, there really wasn't anything other than like 12 step
Yeah.
or rehab. And I actually didn't really know about rehab. I didn't think I had access. I didn't have access to it. But what was there a turning point where you were like, I have to stop. I have to stop. And then you got some help? Like what happened?
I love the verbiage you're using. You said, I have to stop. I have to stop. I did that for, in my 13 years of addiction. After a while, it was like, you get all banged up and you're like, I got to quit doing this, but you don't,
But you don't.
but you don't. Here's what changed for me. It wasn't, I have to get sober. I'm like, I want this.
Mm,
That's what stuck. I don't have to be sober right now. I want to. I
yeah.
like this. So
Yeah.
that was a new thought that came to my mind, and I'm like, okay, this is different. And I know people will say you only have today, you can't say you're done. I knew 31 years ago I was done. I knew it.
Yeah, me too. I had my last drink on my 25th birthday and woke up the next morning and I knew it to my core I would never have another drink of alcohol again. I took a big bong hit right after, but I never.
I got a bong hit.
Yeah, I
That's
took a big bong hit, but even that I was like, I don't want to do this either. Like
yeah,
I really wanted to stop that too. I wanted it. I wanted to stop it all because I
that's good.
felt like there was so much potential. But so when you decided you wanted sobriety, how did you go about doing it in the beginning?
Had to clean myself out. I didn't do detox. I sat in my grandma's house and had everything coming out of a variety of orifices, if you will, trying to keep it G rated. And I remember going through that. I felt horrible like everybody does. And I
Yeah.
would say to myself, you did it to yourself. And this is the last time you're ever going to have to go through with it. So being sick and all that stuff, I embraced it. I
Mm,
embraced it. I'm like, I kept telling myself, feel
yeah.
this again right now and know that it's going to be over. And then you're on to doing something else. And here we are.
Isn't that amazing? Like I often tell women I work with, sometimes they'll come to me with like something that they feel ashamed about, like behavior that they did. And I was like, you know what? Let the pain burn you a little bit. Let
Yeah.
it burn you because the next time you're confronted with that choice, you're going to remember how painful it is and you'll make a new choice.
I love talking to you. And even what you said right there when you're talking about women, but it's applicable to men too. And
Yeah.
this is some stuff that nobody really talks about. The sex stuff, the gambling stuff, the food stuff, it stems from, look, people have been sexually abused by their own parents. They've been beaten, all these horrible things. It's no wonder that people are banged up on whatever. And as soon as you put down the drugs and alcohol, all these other issues start creeping up. People are trying to have a bunch of sex to cope with it, or they're spending a bunch of money and buying cars that they can't afford. It's the same thing. I call that whack-a-mole. We're
Hmm.
just searching for something to ease that pain. And we have to get some licensed professional help to cope with that
Yes.
pain, right?
100%. Yeah, I always did like patchwork recovery. Like I did got sober through 12 step because there really wasn't anything else. But I like immediately got into therapy. Was therapy part of your story?
No, I sound like such a hypocrite because I'm licensed
Todd.
clinician now, and I had tried therapy once when I was a kid and answered a couple questions, and the guy said, "Well, you just got to quit drinking, and that'll be $100." And I had a bad taste of therapy, and the reason I became a counselor was I watched the movie Good Will Hunting, which was
Oh,
phenomenal, beautiful movie, so beautiful. But
it's not
really,
your
I
fault.
it's not your fault. I be I became a counselor because I'm like, I knew what I needed that no one gave me. I
Yeah.
knew I was destructing with drugs and alcohol. I didn't need anybody to tell me you're ruining your life. I wanted somebody to help me understand why I was doing it. I needed
Yeah.
help with healing from the stuff we talked about earlier. And no
Right.
meetings or no counselors were doing that, where they were just saying, quit drinking, go to these meetings and quit drinking. I'm like, that's not the answer. It's the first step into really figuring out the solution to our problems.
So it sounds like you talk about having trauma, and I wonder, I've often wondered, people that don't do counseling, but you're in a counseling profession. It seems like that is therapy in itself in some ways, because you're offering empathy and compassion to people with trauma. And as you give it, it's almost like, it's that idea that we can't escape the same measuring stick that we judge others by. As you offer love and compassion to someone's pain, you also receive it. Does that fit for you in any way?
It does. And I appreciate us talking like this, because there's a difference of having empathy, humility, and gratitude for life and for others. There's a lot of people that get into counseling because they want to help people, but they also are looking for something to come back to help them. That's not what I was doing. But I will say this: I wish there was somebody like me and like Racing for Recovery that I could have gotten help from, because I
Yeah.
needed it. I just got out there and did this on my own, and I give because it's the right thing to do, but I don't give in hopes that it's going to come back to me. That's not professional. I've found other ways to deal and get some help with my own stuff, but I did not get into the field to help myself. I got into the field because I wanted the credentials and the credibility to validate what I truly believed in and have that be of service to other people. And that's really the crux of why I started Racing for Recovery.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Racing for Recovery and the solutions that you've discovered that have helped you, that you offer to others. What are tell me a little bit about that and the solutions.
Well, here, and I don't know if this has happened to you, but when I was doing drugs, any person that fortunately for me was dating me, but unfortunately for them, they were dating me. Um, it wasn't,
Bless their hearts.
right. It wasn't, they weren't doing drugs. I somehow managed, and this goes back to the not really accepting myself. I dated the cheerleader. I dated the intelligent girl, and I kept wondering, like, why are these people hanging out with me? I'm a mess.
Mm.
But one of the things that I really started to realize was when they ended the relationship because of my drug usage, they were doing it to save themselves. They cared about me, but they were like, I got to get out of this for my own sanity. So one of the things that I started with Racing for Recovery was I wanted to have family members in the same meeting that I was in, because I needed to hear what my choices were doing to the innocent bystander. And I needed to have them understand why we were doing what we were doing. So I look at it from an educational and supportive environment for both sides to benefit from. Because I remember a girlfriend telling me one time, she said, Todd, it doesn't matter what you do, I'm still left by myself. When you're doing drugs, I'm by myself. And when you make these attempts to try and get sober, I'm still by myself. And
Mm.
and that was the first catalyst to me that said, these people need some help too, but they need to
Yeah.
understand what it's like on our side of the street just as much as I need to know what I did to my loved ones.
That is so huge. I mean, like I would go to these, I used to speak at a lot of like recovery centers, like women's recovery centers, and there were like middle-aged women with families and extended families and they go into treatment and they dry out, maybe they get some whatever, but they go right back into the environment. And if the environment doesn't change, it's very difficult to maintain sobriety. So that's how do you involve the families with the people that you work with?
You, I keep saying this, but I love talking. This is
I'm
such a
awesome.
conversation. Yes, you are. And I love you saying that about yourself, because you are. Um, You when I think of the word relapse, and we talked about this in our pre-screening, and I'm like, man, I don't like that
You don't
term,
like
but
that word. Yeah.
I don't, because this is what it is. They're calling a relapse when somebody's going back into that same environment, accepting a different result. But why are they using again? They're not getting help from the trauma. They're going back to the same environment.
Yeah.
And of course you're going to drink again.
Yeah.
That's what the relapse is. It's
Yeah.
unresolved trauma in the same environment. So
Exactly.
at Racing for Recovery, we're like, listen, man, create a new environment.
Hmm.
Bring your family into our clinical support group meetings so you can understand not only why you shouldn't go back into it, but we're back to, again, I don't want to go back to that same environment.
Yeah.
Not I can't, I don't want to. And that's
Yeah.
where you start building a whole new lifestyle that then there isn't a relapse. There's a constant choice to go get some more of what recovery is really offering you.
Right. Right. You've mentioned, we've talked about trauma a few times. And I did some trauma therapy myself. I've done a couple different modalities. I tried EMDR and, a few other things. What is your approach at Race to Recovery? Like, what is your approach to addressing and resolving that trauma? Like, because from my understanding, it's like when things happen, I've had my fair share, but it's like I needed of some help to like metabolize it so that it wasn't affecting my behavior today. What kinds of treatment do you use to address trauma?
Great question. I am not versed in EMDR, but we have had some clinicians who were, and I've heard nothing but great results from EMDR.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm a cognitive behavioral guy.
Oh,
I'm also
right.
a little bit of a psychoanalytic.
Yeah.
I believe the psychology of trauma is devastating. There's a book that's out called The Body Keeps the
Keeps the
Score,
score.
which is phenomenal because it does. When people will come in and they'll say, I have stomach issues or I have back issues, that's where trauma is stored, right?
Yeah.
So, on a psychoanalytic level of understanding that, and then using cognitive behavioral therapy to understand, hey, I may be thinking of using or thinking self harm, but I also can change those thoughts to something productive and then put some action behind a productive thought that leads to positive actions and a positive life. So, cognitive behavioral therapy, although it's cliche and everybody uses it, to me, it's my go to thing.
So, do you spend any time like going back to the traumatic events to like reframe those events so they can get like new insights from them? How do you think about the actual events?
Most of my trauma, I don't remember. Like we talked about earlier, I don't
Right.
remember my mom at all. I have no memory of her whatsoever.
Right. Yeah.
There, you know what? I'm going to say this. I believe there's some other trauma that happened to me that I don't want to publicly say, but if you're versed in this, you can probably figure that out.
Hmm.
Um, the real trauma for me, there's a lot of things that I went through in sobriety that were traumatic.
Yeah.
My divorce was difficult. Some things that have happened to me in recovery that have been very traumatic that have caused, well, they've caused more of an impact because I can recall them versus the
Hmm.
things that I don't remember. And that
Yeah.
says a lot, right? So, but being sober, I have the ability to cope with trauma effectively. And people need to understand that just because someone dies or someone
Hmm.
goes through a divorce, that doesn't automatically mean I got to do some bong hits to cope with it.
I feel
Right.
called out. You call me out.
That's me self-deflecting a little bit there
I,
too.
s-
So
I'm picking up what you're putting down.
right on.
No, there is yeah. So I personally had childhood sexual abuse, my parents' divorce. Those are things that were really traumatic for me. And EMDR was good because it did take me back to those periods of time, but I reprocessed those feelings and experiences so that it wasn't because that really affected my self-worth. And I see self-worth and confidence as kind of two different things. Like my self-worth was just like my inherent qualities, like being honest and loving and having a sense of humor and all that stuff. But confidence was like I was getting self-esteem from performance, like my role, my appearance. Do you know what I mean? Like that kind of stuff. So the EMDR sort of helped me resolve like some of those bad feelings or decisions that I had made about myself because of things that happened to me when I was young.
I'm proud of you. And
Thank
this
you.
is where, when you're speaking like that, that's where we're different, not different. You got a quicker, more effective head start on understanding this than I did. And I'll go back to when you said you're awesome. I don't I don't speak like that. I kind of do now in the past couple years, but for years I wouldn't say that because I didn't get that help that you have just discussed right there. And
Yeah.
I want the listener to understand this. There's a benefit to getting good quality professional help. And
Yes.
I can talk about the lack of that, how it affected me. I
Yeah.
probably would still be married if I got help when I needed it. Um, and I'm pointing that out because I'm praising you for doing that
Oh,
earlier.
thank
I
you.
just didn't get.
Yeah. And listen, I want to go back to your comment about experiencing trauma in sobriety. My mother passed away a couple of years ago, and that was probably the most traumatic thing I had experienced in sobriety. She was only sick for 22 days, and I slept next to her every day and was like giving her all her drugs and stuff. And I was able to stay sober through it all, but I was grieving for like, I didn't feel like myself for like 2 years. That was rough. What
Oh,
kinds of things, so that your divorce was really hard on you. How did you cope with that being sober?
well, here's another me self-deflecting for a minute because I want to go back and ask you something. When you were going through that hardship, were you cognizant of, hey, my mom, although this really sucks here, she's with her daughter who's sober. Was that going through your mind as well?
100%. Yeah,
Beautiful.
because I had a sense of um she can trust me. Like
Uh,
she trusted me. You know what she told me when she got sick was that she goes, "I'm not afraid to die, but I don't want to experience pain." And I was like, I got you. That
wow.
got it. Message received. So I was managing her, all her pain, but I felt such a tremendous sense of like it was an honor that the
Mm,
woman that I had admired most in my life, I was the one that she trusted.
beautiful.
Isn't that amazing?
That's fantastic.
Not my sister who was the good girl. She trusted me.
That's beautiful. My grandma, she was everything to me.
Oh,
I remember when she was sick one time and I was still in my addiction. And she said, I was kind of mad, which is hurt because
yeah.
I thought, man, she's going to die. And my grandma said to me, I can't die until I know you're okay. And I thought, wow, I am destroying the only person who has remained in my life with this stuff. But I heard that. And
Yeah.
when she died, I've never talked about this publicly, but when she died, she was in hospice and, it's that
Yeah.
scene, right? And I remember going in there and the doctor said, she's unconscious. It's about to end. And I walked in and I touched her and I said, I go, Granny, and she opened her eyes and looked at me and said, I love you, and back out. And I was like, wow, that was, I'm surprised I can hold it together talking to you like that, but
Good for
it's like
you.
you're describing it.
Yeah.
It felt good that, I'm like, I'm okay. She's going to go and everything's cool. And I'm going to go out there and do what she put me here to do. And it felt great.
That's amazing. Yeah. Isn't it amazing how at the end we realize that the only thing that matters is that we love each other.
Yeah.
That's like nothing else matters. I remember my mom, the blessing for my mom getting the diagnosis like that was that she got to call all her friends and say goodbye. And I would dial the phone. I would, my Auntie Anderly, her girlfriend, I was like, this is what happened. This is where we're at. And I'm going to put my mom on the phone. And they would talk about, all they talked about was the good times that they shared and that they were there for each other through the hard times and that they loved each other and everybody was going to be okay. And I'll see you on the other side. It was amazing.
Yeah.
That was all that mattered in the end.
It's it. If you think of, I like I said, I'm down in the Dominican Republic. I have a
Mm.
blessed life on some materialistic things. I have all the stuff, if you will. I get
Yay.
what I do, which is great, right? But in the end, it's the L word that I couldn't even say for a number of years. It's true
Mm,
love of having people that actually care about you as a human being and want nothing from you. They don't want your money,
yeah.
nothing. They just want you to be your best and be happy. And that's worth millions of dollars.
Yeah.
And people unfortunately are just chasing the buck and the new car and the hot girl. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you don't have true love of family and friends and service, you've missed it. You've missed it.
Miss the boat. Yeah. Tell me how your sense of self-esteem and self-love has changed over the years. How do you feel about Todd now?
I have finally come into myself. I just released my sixth book
That's
on my.
amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you. And the people who have known me that work with me and they're reading it, they've all said the same thing. It's like, dude, you've come in, you finally have
Yeah.
accepted who you are and that you are awesome, meaning me. Um, I'm doing the right thing with my life. I'm doing the right thing. I live well. I've earned it. And I'm proud to say I'm here. I feel good and I'm looking forward to the next half a century because more good stuff is coming. So it feels good to be me finally at
That's
57
amazing.
years of age. Yeah.
That is such a gift. I mean, there's people who just never get that, and you've definitely put in the work and you're doing so much service. Listen, we could sit here and chat all day. But I know people are going to want to, find out more about you. Where can they find your books? Like, where can they find you online if they want to reach out for the services that you provide?
Racingforrecovery.org. If you want to get a hold of me personally, Instagram, I'm Sober Ultraman. I think I'm Sober Ultraman on Twitter, but I'm on all the stuff. Um,
Yeah, you were. That's how I found you.
I do, right? And I answer everything myself. So if you message
Nice.
me, I answer it. I'll get people that like, is this really you? And I'm like, yes, it's me. How you doing? What happened? So again, Sober Ultraman on Instagram, Racing for Recovery is everywhere. If you need help, we've got recovery housing. We have
Wow.
plant-based kitchen, counseling services. We have a live stream support group meeting every Thursday night at 6:30 Eastern that people can tune in for free all over the world and just be a part of what we do.
That's beautiful. I'll leave links to everything if you're listening to this and driving or can't jot it down. Link the all the links will be in the show notes at odatchat.com. But Todd, it was such a pleasure speaking with you. And I'm so excited for you for your race. It's on the 28th. You got 3 days to, well, 2 days, I guess. It's on the 28th. That's so exciting. 114. What's it like going into your 114th Ironman?
There's one thing with anxiety. I have not been able to get over pre-race anxiety yet. It's like 3 days out and I'm already starting to think about stuff. But honestly, when I start every Ironman, yes, I'm anxious, but I just think of what I do. I've done it before. People are going to benefit from it by learning about racing for recovery. And it's part of my job. I've turned my lifestyle into a quote job, but I really don't work. And
That's amazing.
in to be down here, it's just great. So I'm looking forward to getting to the finish line. It's euphoric to cross that line.
Well, I'm going to check in with you afterwards to see how it went. So expect a
Oh,
little DM from me on the 29th.
right on. I love it.
All right, my friend, it was so good to talk to you today. Thank you so much for your time and have a great race.
Likewise. Talk to you soon. Take care.
Okay.
Bye.
One last thing before you go, if you enjoyed the podcast today, please don't forget to subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher and leave a review. And if you'd like to make a donation to the podcast and help me keep the lights on, you can do so by visiting odatchat.com. There's a donation button or membership button on the right-hand side. Have a great day. Thank you so much for joining us.